to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast. Tonight, I am joined by Rob Parker.
Hello there.
Hello, Rob Parker. How are you today? Mid-drink,
With
sorry.
a mouthful of Guinness. Yeah, I'm really, well, as you can tell, I'm really good. Really good. How are you, Chris? Are you okay?
I am well, thank you very much, yes.
It's always good to see you.
It is, and always good to see me. That sounded like I was saying. You're damn right. And we are joined by a debut author tonight of a wonderful book that is out this week. And it is Graham Bartlett. Hello.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you.
It's great to see you, Graham. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. I haven't got any Guinness, so that was a mistake. I've got some orange squash, but that's probably not quite going to have the effect. But there we go. We'll see how we get on.
I hear if you drink it really quickly, it has the same effect as Guinness. Yeah.
I think someone's having you over there, Robert.
Dang, conned again.
Graham, Job 1, please can you tell us about your book that is out this week?
Yeah, well, it's called Bad for Good, and it's a police procedural of sorts. I say of sorts because it takes a slightly different slant, and it's based in Brighton, where I'm from, and the premise is what happens when police cuts are so severe that vigilantism, corruption, blackmail, and mass murder take over as the crime control method of choice. And a lot of people have said, is that based on your personal experience? And of course it's not, but there are some elements in there. So that's what it's all about. And it introduces a new protagonist who's unusually a very senior officer, Chief Superintendent Joanne Howe. And she is reluctantly put into the position of having to tackle all of these horrendous facets of the city of Brighton and Hove, whilst also trying to investigate and catch the killer of her predecessor's son. So lots in there.
That sounds so exciting. And the buzz about this book, Graham, is electrifying. It is it's everywhere. It's all over social media. 5-star reviews flying in all over the place. It's thrilling. You must be thrilled.
I am thrilled. And it's really good to hear you say that, because I think sometimes we live in an echo chamber, and you know, people say to me, "Oh, it's really good. We're loving it. Looking forward to it." But you're obviously not in the same echo chamber as me. So for you to say that, that's very reassuring. And you know, as a debut author, to have that buzz, it's quite humbling actually, because no one really knows my writing. I mean, I've written non-fiction before, but no one knows my storytelling. But people seem to be enjoying it. So good on them.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Why? Because you've. Well, first of all, please can you tell us about your sort of experience? We often talk about the sort of publication journey later on, but actually, your sort of worlds collide a little bit, and I assume play a part in that. So, can you tell us a little bit about your publication journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I start with my background, my background was as a police officer. I was a police officer in Sussex for 30 years. Most of that I was a detective, and for most of that time I worked in Brighton and Hove, which is, for those of listeners that don't know, is a bustling cosmopolitan city about 50 miles south of London on the south coast, and no 2 days are ever the same. So I was a police constable then a detective constable, and I rose up through the ranks, mainly, as I say, as a detective, and then I finished my career as the police commander of the city. So I was the chief superintendent in the city. So I used to describe it to people that if things went wrong in Brighton and Hove, ultimately it was probably my fault. So that's kind of how you kind of pitch that. And yeah, so I've dealt with many types of crimes, probably everything apart from terrorism, and you know, I kind of stumbled into writing when I retired.
Wow. Because we get, you know, it's very rare, isn't it, that we have someone on the podcast that's not just talks the talk, but in actually the writes the right does not work, but has walked the walk in yourself, Graham. You know, that is, so it's very humbling. You know, 'cause, when you write crime fiction, you sort of you create heroes out of people who do this. I certainly wanted to be a police officer myself at one point. So just absolutely amazing. On a personal note, huge respect, man. That is just unbelievable.
I mean, thanks. I mean, there's a lot of people out there doing the same job in a lot more trying circumstances than I did, you know, and that's kind of where Bad for Good came from. Really, was seeing the horrendous cuts that were being made to not only policing but the whole public sector, and kind of almost sort of then extrapolating that into, okay, well, how bad can we make this? You know, how bad can this get, and how bad can a city, a police force, you know, a whole community become because of these cuts? And it's not political with a capital P at all. It's just, you know, contextualizing the pressures of policing in the current situation, and obviously because it's fiction, we kind of take it a stage further and then further, so it's much worse than hopefully it actually is. But using that knowledge, because I left the police in 2013, which was 3 years after the cuts were starting to bite. Now, if you ask any police officer now whether they would go back to the levels of policing and the resourcing and the finances that I was moaning about 9 years ago, they bite your hand off, because it's far worse now, and they're really struggling. So when I started thinking about this book, it was almost kind of set in the near future. And I talk about people now and then going, better crack on and get it published, otherwise it's going to become historical fiction.
Wow, that's unreal, man. And because one of the I think when I first became aware of what you were doing, Graham, it was through your consultancy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is an absolutely incredible resource for writers. And I see, you know, big authors involved with, having a word with you. And that must have been equally fascinating, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I do it every day. I mean, I've been working with authors today, as you know, the day that we're recording this, and I've got authors booked in tomorrow. And I work with, as you say, I work with some very prominent names: Peter James, Anthony Horowitz, Mark Billingham. That I've advised all of those, some of them on a regular basis, some of them on an ad hoc basis, Ellie Griffiths as well. But equally, I work with aspiring authors, you know, some people that maybe are doing an MA in creative writing, that, you know, so the whole spectrum. And I kind of, what I do is I try and use both my policing knowledge and my writing knowledge to provide them with advice and guidance around policing and characters, crime and criminals, and which meets the needs of their story. So I never go in and go, oh, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. I'll go in. My first question to everyone is, what do you want to happen? What's your story, and where do you want to take this? And then I will work with them to come up with credible and authentic and plausible procedures, storylines, characters to help them achieve what they're looking for either in their story arcs or their character arcs, but not subsuming them in detail and facts. I'll tell the writer all the detail and facts, but my guidance is always don't load that on the reader, because they're not interested. If they want to know that, they'll pick up a textbook. But you're writing crime fiction, you want to keep them gripped. So, but this is what would really happen. But in your case, we can make this happen if we sow this seed here, or have this person say that there. And I think the authors that I work with appreciate that dual knowledge and experience. You know, as a crime writer myself and as a police officer, I can bring the two together so that they're not getting this would never happen, that would never happen, this is the way we do things. It's a kind of, okay, let's see how we can make this work sort of service.
What's the most common mistake or that you come across?
I'd say the most common one is people writing their protagonists at too senior level. So, for example, if you want your protagonist to be in an interview room grilling the bad guy, then don't have that protagonist as being anything above the rank of sergeant. Now, that sometimes people conflate seniority with expertise, And I'm sure some people conflate, when I was there, they conflated seniority with competence. But, the very best detectives, the very best interviewers, at the level that readers want to read about, are constables and sergeants. Now, too many times I see chief inspectors in interview rooms. I mean, I advise for TV as well, and that's something that TV writers for trap they fall into. And I'm not blaming anyone, because you wouldn't know it if you hadn't lived in that world. But it's that having that seniority at a too high level. Now, someone like William Shaw, who I'm not sure if you had on the podcast.
Yes, we have. Yeah,
William's a great friend of mine and a fabulous crime writer. With the Alex Kabidi series, he has his protagonist at Detective Sergeant, and occasionally you'll get her giving a nod to the fact that there's some bosses up the line that are kind of guiding it, but you're actually seeing everything through her eyes, and that's the way I would recommend writers do it. There's other procedural things like forensic results coming back to you quickly. This is a great one for TV. People plugging in a USB and downloading a 2 terabyte computer while the suspect's gone off to the bathroom. I know how long it takes to turn my computer on in the morning, so that's not going to happen. It's a basic thing. But there's all sorts of. I mean, on my website, I've got a section called Bartlett's Bloopers that's stacked with these sorts of things where writers just get them wrong. And I say there's no blame, because if I was writing a hospital drama, I wouldn't know how to write an open heart surgery scene. So why should anyone who's not been in the police know how to write?
Yeah. Is there anything that you see and that it is a particular pet peeve, that anything like that goes really makes you go, oh, like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's down to character, really. It's the kind of, and I would say this, wouldn't I, as a former senior officer, but it's the kind of the career hungry, misogynistic, bullying blockage of a superintendent or chief superintendent, coming in and basically almost fighting against the officers that are actually doing the job, and being sort of really kind of mealy-mouthed in it as well. They really are put down quite, which is why I wanted to write in Bad for Good Joe Howe as a chief superintendent, because my world was far from that. I mean, some people might not have liked the way I did things, and you can't please everybody all the time. But my job as the divisional commander in a busy city was to try and protect the front line from all of the political nonsense that was going on above me and around me. So I used to work very closely with the city council, and the political leaning of the city council changed, I think, twice in the 4 years that I was there. So very, very different ideologies in the city. I used to work with the chief officer team, the chief constable and the assistant chief constables, the deputy chief constable, and the finance directors and all that sort of thing. And but my job, I thought, was always to try and protect the constables and the sergeants, police constables or detective constables and sergeants, from the nonsense sometimes that was going on above me and around me, so that they could just get on with their job. Now, you don't see that a lot in crime fiction. You see it the other way, where that BS is piled down on the front line, and sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes I would have to take the hit that we've had a particular team, and I remember this. They hadn't had a weekend. They'd had days off, but they hadn't had a weekend off for 6 months, because we kept cancelling their when they had a rest day on a Saturday or a Sunday because of a protest, a football match, or something else that was going on in the city. And I couldn't do anything about that. So I kind of had to stand up and sort of say, look, I'm really, really sorry, because, officers have families, they have social lives, they like that. But I did that with a heavy heart, I had and apologized to them for it. But just, so quite often you read and you see these senior officers kind of being the problem. And very often, I mean, none of my peers, and I don't know of anyone across the country of my rank, would be like that. They were, because we've all come through the ranks. We've all been,
of course,
we've all walked the streets. We've all kind of been detective. That's our career path. We've all been detective constables, so we've all felt the pressure. So why would we then only exasperate that by piling more on the officer doing the hardest
so
job?
Interesting. Really,
that's what I do with Jo Howe in Bad for Good. She's constantly battling against the pull elsewhere and the pull and the push elsewhere. And she in some cases she has a better relationship with the PCs, the police constables, than she does with, a much better relationship than she does with her senior officers. But I won't say too much more about that.
Well, no, yeah. That's absolutely amazing.
How did you find writing her character? Did you find yourself drawing on experience, or was there a balance of trying to just make it fiction?
Yeah, well, this book, Bad for Good, started in my head about 7 years ago. So you can see how long I've been faffing around with it. And when I started it, her character was a man, and because I was new to novel writing, I'd written non-fiction, but new to novel writing, I kept finding myself drifting into almost sort of an autobiographical world, and I didn't want that. People will know the job that I used to do, and they know the job that my protagonist in Bad for Good has, and I didn't want them to think, oh, this is just, you're just ranting. It's you, isn't it? This is you. So a simple way to do that was to change the gender. Now, that wasn't simple at all, because I know what it's like to be a senior officer in a medium-sized force in the UK, because I've done that. I have no idea what it's like to be a female senior officer in a medium-sized force in the UK. So I wrote the character, wrote as best I could with all of the things that I thought would be the same as my experience, but also adding in things so she's got a young family. Jo Howe's got a young family. Her husband is an investigative journalist who works abroad sometimes. And I kind of thought, well, maybe he's a nice bloke, her husband. Darren's a nice bloke, but maybe he just he thinks, oh, I've got, we've got a lead to follow up in New York. I'm going to go to New York, follow that up, leaving her with the kids and a very, very high profile job, very high pressure job. And it's kind of, oh, okay, what, aren't there two of us in this marriage? That kind of thing. So when I'd written, I think probably the second or third draft with her as a woman, I sent it to a woman called Di Roskilly, who was a chief superintendent in Sussex, and a really, really talented, honest, and just a wonderful police officer and a wonderful human being. And she read it in detail, and she came back to me, and I thought she'd have like 2 or 3 notes for me about it. And she said, let's do a Zoom call. And I thought, oh, here we go. Here we go. And to be honest, a lot of it was similar to my experience. The way that Jo Howe runs various operations. When she starts off in the book as a detective superintendent, so the way she runs the murders and that, very similar. But the actual career path and experiences, and just some of her inner monologue weren't quite right. And Di took me through that. And in some places she said, you've overdone this. She said, it's not that bad. She said, but in other places she'd say, no, that wouldn't have happened. She wouldn't be feeling that, but she's feeling this. And it was really, really useful to have that, just have that insight that, as a man, as a middle-class man doing that job, I couldn't hope to have, even though, I like to think that I'm fairly kind of open and have worked around senior women before, but actually, living the world from their perspective was really tricky. So I was really grateful for that. And I'm definitely, she'll be looking at other books too, because, I know that I'll trip back into, how it was for me without it being autobiographical.
Amazing. And I wanted to ask, first things first, sorry. Slight segue. A wonderful listener, Jackie, got in touch recently to say that she always thinks I'm trying to get away with it when she hears a beer can open on the episodes. So I'm not at all trying to get away with it. I'm going to put it right by the mic.
It is on camera.
Wallop. There we go. This one's for you, Jackie.
How long have we been talking now? About
25 minutes. 25 minutes.
That's your second one.
No, it's a happy occasion having a chat with you, mate. And, so that one's for you, Jackie.
Did you? Oh, no.
No, I'm so sorry. That one's for you, Jackie. Graham, I wanted to ask about working with all these wonderful authors and seeing how their processes go. How did that inspire and inform your own approach to your own fiction work?
So, I mean, my mentor is Peter James, and that is just an incredible thing to be able to say. I mean, I've worked with Peter James when I was in the police. He saw some of my writing and asked me to write a non-fiction with him. So, he doesn't only help me on the fiction, but Death Comes Knocking, which was our first non-fiction. I wrote and he fixed, really. But in doing so, he taught me how to write. He taught me the approach. I didn't know anything about writing at all. I used to write police reports. I was used to writing statements or reports to, try and persuade people that we shouldn't lose, 25 officers, this quarter and all. But, actually writing something that people want to spend their hard-earned money to read, no idea. So Peter took me through that in the process of writing Death Comes Knocking, and then we wrote a second one, Babes in the Wood, and he was more. He didn't need to be quite as hands-on there, but he definitely was there for me and helped me. So, Peter's my mentor. He goes through my books now. He's gone through Bad for Good. He's gone through book 2 and given me fabulous. I don't mean fabulous in terms of this is wonderful. This is a wonderful book, but really insightful. Feedback on it and ways to improve it and polish. So I learn a lot from him. I learn a lot about the process from some of the more experienced ones. But the reason Bad for Good took me 7 years to write is because I kept getting to a certain stage, then go back and editing it and changing it, and then a lot of successful authors say to me, just write the thing, just write it, just get to the end. Don't worry about it. Just, that first draft's for you. Just get to the end, know where the story's going, and then you go back and you start editing it. And that's become my kind of my mantra now to myself is that, I'm writing book 3 at the moment, and I'm just, it's hard, but I'm resisting the temptation to keep going back and just fixing chapters here and fixing scenes there and just, cutting characters there and putting new ones in here. I'm just going to get to the end. And if it's 25% over a word count, if it's 125,000 words, I don't care, because I know I'll lose those in the second edit. So I've learned a huge amount from them, and I'm so grateful because you can spend a lifetime learning this stuff, and I'm privileged enough to work with these people almost on a daily basis, and they just chuck it in, as wisdom for me.
How did it feel going from having unlimited, you talked about 7 years, but having 7 years to write book 1 with no pressure, to writing the second one, which I assume is done with, some sort of deadline? Yeah,
that was different. That was 7 years, because I honestly, in that 7 years, we did bring out the 2 other books, and so I wasn't just literally coming down every day and just fiddling around and just going, yeah. But yeah, writing without a deadline, it is a blessing in some ways, because you can kind of try things out. But I work very well to deadlines. If someone gives me a deadline, I'll generally meet it. If they don't give me a deadline, forget it. I'll have loads of other important things that I need to do rather than do that. So the deadline's helpful. But yeah, with book 2, we signed the contract so I've got a 2-book contract with Allison and Busby at the moment, and we signed that, I think, in September, and they wanted book 2 by the end of January, and it was about half written at that point. I knew where I was going with it, but it was about half written. But that really applied my mind, and you know, but even so, I stuck to this principle of just get it written, go back and edit it. So it was hard, but it focused my mind. And to be honest, I think my writing was more efficient in that way, because I knew I didn't have time to, you know, faff around, you know, just putting in scenes here that I mean, there was a scene in Bad for Good. I absolutely loved it. And then my editor said to me, "That's a great scene, but it doesn't take you anywhere, does it?" I said, "But it's such a good scene. It's really good. It's all about, you know, police officer getting," it sounds awful, police officer getting beaten up and somebody racing to the scene, and it's all very dramatic. And she said, "Yeah, but it doesn't take you anywhere, does it?" I went, "Well, no, I suppose not." And so, you know, but I did on book 2, I didn't have that. I didn't have that luxury to do that. So I did what I didn't do on book 1, and I planned to a degree. I wrote a 5-act plan and stuck to it, and that really helped me.
Absolutely superb. Just to sort of like as a slight segue, I wanted to ask about how writing non-fiction, the difference between writing non-fiction and fiction, and how you approach that, and what stylistic changes or process changes you did. I mean, obviously, because I'm talking about here, of course, Babes in the Wood, and because that's far more personal, isn't it? There's a lot more of an biographical. Auto is when you do it yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's both, though. It's both, because I wasn't involved in all of the Babes in the Wood. So the Babes in the Wood,
right?
Babes in the Wood is basically a 32-year or story that spans 32 years. It starts off with a double child murder in 1986. A man, it's public knowledge. There's no spoilers in what I'm about to say, but a man gets arrested, charged, goes to court, gets acquitted. About 2 years after he's acquitted, he then kidnaps an even younger girl and takes her to a hilltop in Sussex, tries to kill her, sexually assaults her, and then he's arrested and convicted of that and serving life imprisonment. And then 32 years later, after the first incident, the police are able to bring him back before court because of a change in law and a change in science, which means that he can now be retried for this. His name was Russell Bishop. He can now be retried for the murders of Nicola Fellows and Karen Hadaway, who were the two girls in '86. And he was convicted. He was actually convicted 31 years to the day after he was acquitted of those crimes back in the '80s. And it tells the whole story of that. You know, right the way across the you know, basically, you know, it's over a quarter of a century. It was really, really emotional to write that, because, you know, at the end of the day, you've got two young girls who lost their lives. You've got families that have been robbed of justice. You've got a police service that didn't do as bad as the public or the press portrayed them to, but at the end of the day, the criminal justice system let them down and caused another girl to be kidnapped and nearly killed. So writing that I just felt a huge responsibility in writing that. You know, there was no fun in it at all. I mean, I was very satisfied with the process and very satisfied with what we did, but I wanted to bring the story out to people in as clear a way as possible. And there's some incredible complexities in here, particularly around forensic science. There's some stuff that, I mean, I know, you know, a fair amount about forensic science. I sat there reading it and rereading it and what is this telling me? And then trying to put that into a way that a lay reader will be able to understand it and go, okay, I've got it. I now know why that DNA profile there is significant and that one isn't, and why those two things are true. So I had to write it in a very accessible way, but really detailed way. And it was I remember when I sent the draft off to my then publishers, and they came back and they the first edit, they completely turned my forensic chapters round, because they said it didn't, it didn't read as clearly as it might, and they were right, but the changes they were made it completely incorrect and even more confusing. So I like, no, I've got to do this the way I want to do it. So I felt a huge responsibility in getting that right, getting it accessible, being fair to the families, and not making it gratuitous. A lot of people say to me, "Oh, not sure whether I'd like it. I don't like to read about child death." Well, there's not a lot of detail about the actual murders themselves. It's more about the investigations, the cultures around at the time, both the police cultures and the community cultures, political cultures, and how we got to the point where the police could eventually, or the CPS and the police could eventually rebring charges and have him convicted.
Amazing.
But the difference, I mean, obviously that story was, the story is there, the characters are there. I don't have to create the story, I don't have to create the characters. But the research was just mind blowing, because I wanted to get it all right. And we're talking about in the 80s where there was nothing online, and I didn't have access to any. I mean, I'm no longer in the police, so they're not going to give me access to the files of an ongoing prosecution. So I kind of had to speak to people that I was allowed to speak to, because I couldn't speak to any witnesses until after the trial, and I had to kind of really pick my way through it. So I thought writing fiction would be a walk in the park after that, but then of course I realised I've got to create the worlds, I've got to create the stories, the characters, I've got to decide who lives and dies.
This is it.
Those things, but it was much more enjoyable than writing non-fiction. I think particularly Babes in the Wood, Death Comes Knocking, which is almost like an anthology of crimes and incidents and themes that influence the Peter James novels. That was more fun. I mean, there are some horrible stories in there, but they're short, they're sharp, and they kind of tell a story about how they influenced the Roy Grace novels. Babes in the Wood, much harder to write.
Right.
But in terms of the research, but fiction, probably more taxing on definitely more taxing on my imagination, but great fun. I play God.
Yeah, that's so good. So interesting you say that. Chris and I, we've both been doing a bit of script work for podcast producers, haven't we? About true crime and history and stuff like that. And I with being a novelist, like I find them like palate cleansers, like a nice little step aside, because like you say, the story's already written. I don't have to make anything up here. I don't have to try and connect the dots on a story. I just have to make sure it reads and sounds okay. Incidentally, if I could add, listeners, that I've, just as we were talking there, so compelling listening to Graham there. The Big River website that we don't name on here, you can go on there at the moment if you like. And Babes in the Wood is £4.49 in paperback.
Is it?
Yes. You should see Graham's face. I'm so sorry, man.
I'm joking.
Well, I mean, you got a sale right here just a couple of seconds ago, so I clicked the big buy button. No.
That came out a month before the first lockdown,
wow.
And in terms of reviews and feedback, they're infinitely better than Death Comes Knocking. Death Comes Knocking ended up as a Sunday Times top 10 bestseller, number 7, 1 week, but I'm having it. But Babes in the Wood didn't. But I think it's a better book. I'm happier with my writing on that book than not. But by Death Comes Knocking as well, by all means. But
well, I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
And Death Comes Knocking has got a couple of pictures of me as an 18-year-old PC, and you will then know why when I used to walk the streets of Bognor. In my first 2 years, the chant was, does your mum know you're out? Is what I.
Oh gosh!
But Chris and Rob who are now looking at me on screen, will see that it'll be, does your carer now know you're out?
That is not true, listeners. This is not true. That's awesome.
We love an exclusive on the podcast. Are we allowed to know anything about book 2?
So yeah, by all means, yeah. So book 2, Jo Howe comes back. She's been through the ringer in book 1, so she comes back. She's a bit battered and bruised by what's gone on. I won't say too much more than that. But so book 2 looks at what happens when basically a neo-Nazi city council takes over leadership of the council, and how they use human trafficking and modern slavery to serve their agenda of hate. And Jo is plunged right in the middle of it. She's having to battle with excess deaths in care homes, with corruption in the police, and a far right council that are doing all they can to rid Brighton and Hove of anybody that isn't like them.
Wow.
So it deals with big issues, but within a sort of, you know, a policing sort of on the ground context. And I've just sent another draft back to my editor today, and I was reading the last scenes, going through it, and I'm thinking, God, I hope I can write book 3 like this, because I mean, I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I just thought, ooh.
Yeah, no, there's sometimes where you're feeling it, aren't you? You're feeling it, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, so that's gonna come out. Not sure of the title yet. We're still mulling that over, but that's going to come out early 2023. At the same time, I gather, at the same time as the paperback for Bad for Good is coming out. So
excellent stuff. Oh, it's so exciting. That sounds incredible.
Yeah,
that second book, by the way.
I'd set myself up sometimes, because, you know, I tried to the kind of the approach I want to take is try and write crime and policing within this socio-political context that you know the world could go in. So not kind of making it, you know, a political thriller, but showing the impact of politics and social movement, I suppose, on policing. But you know, there I am. So I'm piling far right extremism, human trafficking and modern slavery, and excess deaths in care homes in one book. Now, why didn't I make 4 books out of it? I could have done that, but I'm just going to pile it all. Well, I might not get another contract, so I just might put it all into one.
No, I mean, I think if there's any man for the job here, Graham, I'm thinking it's you, mate. I really am. Oh, it's so much to chew over here, Chris.
Yes, I was going to say, my phone battery's about to die, and I've prepared the game on it. So can we play the game in case it goes?
Yes.
Have you listened to the podcast before, Graham?
I have. Of course, I have.
Thank you.
You're aware of the ones.
I'm not going to say no, am I?
For the listeners that have not, we play a 1-star superstar game where, although you've not had any 1 stars, so I've gone out.
Well, you look harder. Look harder.
Not the Big River one. I found some other people that have given 1 stars, and I've looked at what they've reviewed, and you just have to tell us whether it's 1 star or 5 star. So the first one is a 3-pack of it's called Comfort Bra, like a crop top kind of thing.
Oh, right. I thought they were books. I thought we do books. Okay.
No, not books.
Gone straight into Comfort Bras. Thanks.
And one looks like it's like an extra. You know the ones that like for exercise.
Yeah.
Oh, like a sports thing.
The sort of crop top, yeah, sports.
Yeah, right. And 1 or 5 stars, so they loved or hated. This could be a giveaway, but do we have any idea of the gender of the reviewer?
A female.
Right, good. That does make a difference in this instance,
yeah,
I think.
Well, yeah, I think it would have done. Yeah.
What are you thinking, Graham?
I think 1 star.
For the purposes of competition, I'll go 5. They flipping love them.
Okay. Any reasons?
Just deeply comfortable.
Comfortable, yeah.
Yeah.
1-star, Graham, any reason? Just
I think probably the wrong size, not enough restraint. I don't. I'm always very comfortable with my sports bras, so no others aren't.
It is 5 stars.
Oh,
She's given. Well, I don't think it sounds like a 5-star tagline, but it's major mono boob.
oh,
What?
And then the review is major mono boob, but super comfy for around the house. So
What's a mono boob?
where I sort of think they get squashed into one.
Right. We are tackling uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
I am
into this.
mono boob.
We'll move on swiftly,
Wow.
shall we? The next one is a DVD of wacky races.
A DVD of Wacky Races. Well,
Yeah.
that is my era. Wacky Races. I used to watch those when I was young, but there weren't any DVDs around then. So it's got to be. I mean, you can't beat Wacky Races. It's got to be 5-star.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's a 5-star as well. I've got to be honest. I think, but no, purposes of competition, 1 star.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah. 1 star. They, I don't know. There's something they didn't like about it. Unrealistic racing scenes.
One of my Facebook statuses from about 10 years ago, they come up like as memories. And one of them the other day was, if Dick Dastardly just raced, he would win every race because he's always so far ahead.
Yeah, instead of trying to blow everyone up and whatever.
Yeah, the complex thoughts of a 23-year-old there. The DVD got 1 star.
I'm rubbish at this.
Looks like it was made in the 1980s. And I looked it up because the first episode aired in 1968. So
I was going to say, I remember. I mean, I was, yeah. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Goodbye. I may or may not be able to verify that.
Mono boob is a new quote for the ages, I think. Listeners, write in. Have you ever heard of the word mono boob, listeners?
We've got to. There's a challenge for us, all 3 of us. We've got to get that into our next book.
I think, right, challenge accepted. Challenge accepted.
And it's got to be contextual as well. You can't just kind of just chuck it in.
Well,
someone bellowing it from the street or something like that.
Is that person shouting mono boob? Just going to leave a note for myself on the desk here that simply says mono boob.
And that.
There's always the worry that I see in reviews of things though, where it's like he introduced a woman as like straight away talking about her body or physique, and I was thinking I really don't want to fall into that. But
yeah,
for the mono boob, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, no.
Really unsafe. I don't know.
If you see an accident, like suddenly in the middle of a scene in my next book, like a total like maniac comes in and he's in for one scene just to say mono boob, you know that person was crowbarred in just for that, for that purpose.
Rob, we could because Graham said his second book's coming out in January or the start of next year, so maybe
next year sometime.
We'll let him do it first. See
his after you, Graham.
And if it's not in there, I'll just say my editor took it out.
Yeah. Funny that, because I think mine's about to take out as well.
Yeah, just on this sort of 1-star thing. During lockdown, when everyone did these kind of Zoom quizzes, we used to do them. My kids were all at various kind of places around the country, and we did them once a week. And I did one on 1-star reviews on books, and I kind of went into the books that they would know, and they had to kind of try and guess the book from the 1-star review. And one of my lads, all he reads is sports biographies, so yeah, they kind of had to be sports ones again. And there was one, and it was, I can't remember whether it was an Arsene Wenger biography or certainly maybe an Arsenal player or something like that. Verified purchase, 1-star review. I effing hate Arsenal. Verified purchase. So if you effing hate Arsenal, what are you doing buying the book and then giving it a 1-star review? You spent 16 quid on a book about a team you hate. Great fun. It's worth doing it though. There's There's some fabulous ones out there.
Oh,
Some of them, we all know, don't we? Some of them, people put 1 star and it's like the best book I've ever read, and this was amazing, and they just don't understand the rating system.
I mean, I'm thinking it's not hard to misunderstand a 5-star rating system, but then again, you know.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. At this point, Graham, we usually ask what we're all reading. So what are you reading at the moment?
At the moment, I haven't just started it, but I'm reading The Companion by Leslie Thompson.
Oh, fabulous.
So Leslie's new standalone, which comes out, it might already be out, but anyway, I've got an advanced copy of it. But and it promises to be absolutely fabulous. I can't tell you much about it at the moment. Prior to that, though, because that's a bit of a cop-out, so I haven't just started it. I'm actually judging for the CWA Daggers non-fiction, so I'm going through some of those at the moment. And you know, I wish I'd done this before I'd written non-fiction, because some of them are actually incredible. So I'm doing that. But the fiction, The Botanist, M.W. Craven, finished that.
Wow.
What a book!
Yeah,
what a book! Well, I mean, what a series! He's just
it's ridiculous, isn't
it? Yeah, I mean, he's represented by the same agent as me. And I'm always having a go at him about, you know, can you just leave writing or something, because it makes the rest look so bad.
Yeah.
You know, Poe and Bradshaw, how do they work as characters? But they do, don't they? It's just incredible, and he's just a bloke as well.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's wonderful what he's done and what he's doing, and that you know, like there's a place, isn't there, for a brilliant lead character with a brilliant foil. You know, like that kind of thing doesn't happen so much anymore, and he's really smashed it. Yeah,
and their brilliance is so, they're so opposing, aren't they? I mean,
You
know, Poe is really old school, grumpy, grinds out results, and you know Tilly with her, you know, if she's on the spectrum, then she may well be, but certainly her kind of her intellect, lack of filter. And just you know the way she is, you know, they should hate each other, but they would die for each other, and it just makes and of course The Botanist is, you know, I said how hard it was to write forensic science. The way Mike's written science in The Botanist, and you know the I know he's helped by Brian Price, who's, you know, is a good friend of mine as well, in doing that, but it's informative. But it drives the story, and it's a masterclass in how to use your knowledge and research in a way that drives the story, rather than just kind of showing off that you know lots of new stuff that you found out. It's brilliant.
That's
brilliant.
very cool, man. Very cool. And that's I can't say, well, because it's out today, the day of recording, but this is coming out in a couple of weeks, isn't it? So it was out a few weeks ago, folks. If you've not read it,
It's been out ages.
It's been out ages. If you've not read it, go and read it. And Chris, what about you, mate? What are you reading?
I've been on a little PI kick. So I've read like sort of old James Sallis, Charles Willeford, like discovering these old characters from like I mean, I said old school, like I think Charles wrote his in like the 30s and stuff. So it's been really cool. And Don Nolan has recommended me loads of them. So I've just stockpiled some to go on holiday, and I've got The Long Goodbye by Raymond Chandler up next.
Oh,
so absolutely awesome, man.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Well, I'm really deep in a first draft at the minute, so I struggle to read crime when I'm in that. So the only time I'm reading now is when it's, you know, like very, very late at night and I'm falling asleep. So I'm reading a bit of horror. So I'm reading Christina Henry's Near the Bone, which is just super duper. The listeners who know me will know that this very simple premise ticks every box for me. There is a couple in a cabin up in the woods. We don't really know what year it is or anything like that, or at least I still don't know where I am in the book. And there is a monster circling the cabin. And we don't really know much else about that. There's just massive footprints in the snow, and I'm so enjoying this. It's just really, really great. And it's giving me that, you know, like it feels a bit like when I was a kid and I used to read a lot of point horror stuff, you know, not that this is, you know, this is this is way more advanced than that, is what I mean. But that similar sense of wonder and possibility is with me. Incidentally, sometimes we like to talk about pulling back the curtain on the industry, Chris, a little bit, and to say what it's really like. And Graham, you've been very candid with us tonight about that. Because I think that there's lots of misconceptions about the industry, isn't there? And about, because we were asking questions of each other before we came on air about, how certain things work and things like that. And so people have been asking me about how episode 3, how book 3 of the Far From the Tree trilogy is going. I was given a release date about 3 weeks ago. You said you needed a deadline, Graham.
Yeah,
I was given a release date, and I was shocked to hear it's later this year, actually within the year. So I was like, whoa. So I started writing it on Boxing Day, like I have done the last 2 books of this series. But I found this so tough, so hard going, and I just wasn't happy with any of it. So this is just to let the listeners know about a little bit about the process and whatever. I have a little graph on a website called Pacemaker, where every day I put in my word count so I can keep on track for hitting the goal. I have to turn this book in on the 5th of July if we're going to make this deadline. A first draft has to be in by 5th of July. And on this is so embarrassing, but I believe in it. I believe in this. So on the 12th of January, I was on 1,267 words. By the 27th of March, I was on 4,634. So I'd given myself, 7 months to write this thing. By the 26th of May, I was on 4,996. And I'm looking at the time here going, holy heck, but a deadline's been approved. So now I know what the deadline is. I'm now on, I don't know what so that was the 24th of May. Now it's the 2nd of June, and I'm on 25,862.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's suddenly, listeners and writers and everybody, the cork in the dam just pops, doesn't it? And then suddenly, God, I can't stop now. And it's falling out of me at a ridiculous speed, and it's painful to try and get it down at the speed it's coming out. So that's a little bit of insight. And please, dear God, can my agent and publishers not be listening to any of that? But I'm actually really on course to make July 7th or July 5th. So we're good, I think.
So you're on course. So yeah, as you say, we're recording this on the 2nd of June. You've got 33 days. How many words? What's your word count?
They look for about 80 with this one. So I've got another, what is that, 55?
What are you on at the moment? Yeah.
25.
Yeah. That's still a lot. God.
It's still a lot, but then I'm thinking, if I've done, what was the 24th to the 2nd, how many days is that? That's like 8 days.
Yeah.
20,000 in 8 days, give or take.
Yeah.
I can do this. I can do this.
You can
I can do this, guys. I'm sorry about the slight segue, but
so with a deadline like that and reading horror at night, how do you sleep?
I don't at all. And the 3 kids are off at the minute for this Jubilee, and it's street parties and all sorts. So I'm just going to stay indoors and kill people on the page. On the page. Yes, the family is safe. Yes, the dog, on the other hand, this dog is an idiot. So cretinous dog. This that we have here. No, he's got, what he's done is he's had his his snippety snip. So he's got the big cone on like this to keep away from everything. The cone of shame. And it's massive. It's absolutely huge. And he keeps. So what he does is he goes number 2, and then he turns around, and with the cone he scoops it up into the cone, so it's stuck in the cone with him. He's like trying to get it. It's just, what is wrong with you? Ah, dear.
He doesn't get that off you, does he?
No, he does not. Although after this episode, at the end of this episode, I think I need a cone of shame.
Can we end with one final question?
What, for Rob?
No, we're coming back to you. Rob likes to ask this question. I'm going to steal it from him.
Oh yeah.
What if you could explore a different genre to write in? Is there something that you'd like to do further down the line?
If I could, a different writing genre? I'd like to do historical fiction. I think I love Wilbur Smith. The older books, the Egyptian series and the Courtneys. I love all that. I love, and I think, even though what's said about research, obviously, with non-fiction, but I'd love to just explore ancient, an ancient time and try and create something from that. I do love, historical fiction is my palate cleanser from crime, and if I could write that would be amazing, because I think I would just love the process. I think love finding out about different worlds, different people, different times. I think nowadays we're locked so much into the here and now and the kind of immediacy and everything, and I'd love to explore a slower and probably more challenging time, but something that probably has a lot more depth and color to it than the world we live in. Any
particular era?
Well, I love the ancient Egyptian period. I love that. I think also I wouldn't, looking at the time of the American Revolution, the founding fathers, I'm sort of particularly sort of inspired. I mean, a lot of us kind of learned a lot about Hamilton, didn't we? Alexander Hamilton, we seen Hamilton, and then reading around that and understanding what it was like to create a nation, with people who don't necessarily get on against a common enemy, and all of those things. I'd love to be able to just kind of just plunge back into that world. I read a book a few years ago called New York, and it literally starts but back in I can't remember, but long before the American Revolution, and it's fiction, but it tells a story through successive generations right the way up to 9/11 from that, and you learn so much about the development of New York and the creation of the nation and the people and the diversity and all of that. But it was really clever, the way that you just kind of just very, very subtly the generations handed over to generations. It wasn't like, okay, right now we're in the 1800s. It wasn't like that at all. It was just like reading it's probably about 200,000 words, but it was such a joy. I'd love to be able to write something like that.
If you find out the name of that, or like if you know the author, please could you let me know? It sounds like something I'd really like to read, actually.
Yeah. I'll look it up and I'll send it to you at the end of the chat.
Cheers, thank you. Well, thank you. I mean, that was probably our time up.
Yeah.
Really, really insightful and really cool to hear all about Bad for Good and everything else that we've discussed. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for. I was so delighted to get the invite to come on this. I've loved your podcast for a long time, and just that it's just such a blast, but also it's such a great opportunity, particularly for a debut, to come on this. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolutely fascinated with everything tonight, Graham. And I look forward to our paths crossing again, because I do owe you a Guinness for enjoying a couple while we or a tipple of your choice.
Anything good. Guinness is fine. Yeah, anything. I'm a cheap date, whatever.
Massive happy publication day, love, and congratulations. The buzz about this book is amazing. Everyone, go out there and buy Bad for Good as soon as you can.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Rob.
I'm Simon.
And I'm James.
We want to talk about those movies. Those supposedly bad movies. Those movies that bombed.
To see if they weren't that bad after all, join us every other Tuesday on the For Your Reconsideration podcast, part of the Pod Dojo podcast network.
You can catch us on iTunes, Spotify, and all your usual podcast apps.
And it won't cost you a solitary bean, mate. It's like it's free.
It's just like it's free.